I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation requires a warning. What we're presenting this hour may be disturbing. It's not what you will see, but what you will hear. A shockingly casual confession of a brutal murder by a 19-year-old. Here's the story. It was March 1st, 2021, 1:48 p.m. Terry and Brian Cohee called 911. It was an absolutely shocking moment. They had just found a decomposing head in their son Brian Jr.'s closet in his room. Police quickly responded, and when they arrived, things got even more bizarre. 19-year-old Brian Cohee casually confessed to committing an awful murder of a complete stranger. His parents were stunned. Police were caught off guard, but quickly took Brian into custody. Brian Cohee was then brought to the police station. What happened next was nothing less than jaw-dropping. Cohee not only confessed to the murder, but he provided explicit details. How he chose his victim, how he committed the murder, what he was saying and feeling as he was doing it. He also discussed his admiration for serial killers. At trial, Cohee was convicted and sentenced to life without parole, and now the public is trying to get more insight into this case and figure out how and why this happened. This will be chilling. This will be absolutely chilling as we listen to the words of this 19-year-old Brian Cohee. I mean, his demeanor is so different than what he is talking about. So, when police first respond to the scene after the 911 call by mom and dad, they start speaking with Brian Cohee, the 19-year-old defendant, the 19-year-old killer. And the conversation, I just have to play it for you. I think that's the best way to understand what I'm trying to explain here. Take a look.
What's going on, man?
Not much. Cooperate. I am going to cooperate.
Okay, so parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
Like, for real human head and hands?
Yes.
From?
That fellow who went missing recently.
Which fellow was that?
Warren Brown.
Warren Brown? When did he go missing?
The night of the 27th.
The night of the 27th? Okay,
Yes.
and how did you end up with him?
I murdered him.
With what?
A knife.
Why would you have done that?
I've always wondered what murder felt like.
That's how this investigation really begins. You understand why I was giving these warnings and trying to set this up. Like, the demeanor is chillingly scary. And what he's talking about in such a casual manner. Took the life of a man. So now investigators show up, and this is the beginning of it all, and it brings us to the first question in our investigation, which is, what is the next step in this investigation? He's just blurted out what he did. It's the first thing he says. So now what do? How do you put this all together? Joining me to help us understand all this, anchor at KREX TV in Grand Junction, Colorado, covering this story in depth. Bernie Lang is with us, and former homicide detective with more than 20 years of experience working super high-profile cases. Phil Waters is with us. Phil, I just want to start with you. Like, this is the first moments of the investigation, the first interaction with the defendant. Like, how do you respond to that, and what sort of things do you have to put into action at that moment?
Well, thanks for having me back, Vinny. You've got a doozy tonight. I will tell you, this is a rare occurrence when you have someone who is going to admit or confess to murdering someone without even asking that question and having no idea that that's what he's done. I was taken by the calm way in which he presented himself in regarding this, and very open. And in this setting, you've got a res gestae statement. He's not in custody, so what the officer does, he continues on with a non-custodial interview. He doesn't have to Mirandize him. He's not in custody, but he gets the information from him. And then I'm curious to find out if he was taken to police headquarters for the interview by detectives in a non-custodial manner, or if he was in fact taken into custody and under arrest. Then that would set the stage for a custodial interview. But it's like any investigation. You're just getting the ending that you desire to have at the end, at the beginning. So now he has confessed. We've got evidence. We've got this head. We've got these hands. They're going to get a search warrant. They're going to conduct a deep dive investigation into quantifying what he has admitted or confessed to. So it will be a full-on. You will do nothing different here than you would if you found the body, and now you've got to get to the right person who did this wrong thing. We're just doing this in reverse.
It's unreal. I want to take a look at one more piece of the body cam video. Again, providing more details very quickly.
I was driving, and I saw a strange shape near the railway. So I parked my car and investigated it, and I found it to be a man sleeping.
Okay. Where's the knife at?
It is in my sunken car. Well, it's in my car.
I have that
previously sunken.
This is going to be an investigation, and I'll take it from there.
Okay. So did that happen when you crashed your car? Or is that totally different?
That's related, but a different event.
Okay. How's it related?
Well, when I killed him, I tried disposing of his body by putting it in the river, but I parked too low in the river. And
where's the rest of his body at?
Huh?
Where's the rest of the body at?
What parts?
The body, Brian. Where's his body?
Down the river.
Okay, Bernie Lang, KREX. Tell me the story here. This had to absolutely floor you in the newsroom once you started hearing some of these details.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me here tonight. I remember the case well from when it unfolded, and it came over, I believe, over the scanner. Most newsrooms have police scanners in the event there is breaking news. And in this case, my recollection is we heard that body parts had been found under a bridge, and then again in a separate part of the river, a little ways up at a place called Blue Heron boat ramp. And so we got on the story right away, but it took a little while for details to emerge. And, you know, in the news business, we say horrifying, shocking, the shocking details. And those are cliches, but in this case, it's apt, of course. It's a small town here, and it's a very friendly town. A lot of people know each other. And the victim, Warren Barnes, who has been described as homeless throughout, you know, all these sort of news reports and court reports. I was told by some friends that he wasn't really homeless. He chose to live that lifestyle. He was just kind of a gypsy. And what makes it all the more horrifying, not in just the way that he was killed in such a cold, calculating manner, was the fact that Warren Barnes, the 69-year-old man, he was a beloved figure in the downtown community. Grand Junction has a beautiful Main Street community. It's very tight-knit, lots of businesses and restaurants, and he was a regular down there, and he was a voracious reader, and he was very friendly. But again, he chose this sort of lifestyle, so when he was identified as the victim, and he had been reported missing, that really just added to the abject horror of what had happened. And it was really hard to put our hands around it. How does a 19-year-old kid basically do this in such a horrifying and calculating manner? And then, of course, details come out about Brian Cohee himself, and then the story, as we say in the business, it just blew up. It was really disturbing, incredibly sad, and in a vile way, very interesting, because we're looking at the human condition now of what seemed to be an ordinary kid. As you saw in the body cam video, how an act of evil can be committed by somebody who is as ordinary as him, with or without neurodivergent problems that he might have had.
Yeah, it's baffling to a certain extent, but you got to peel back the layers a little bit. Phil, we only have about 20 seconds here, but when you hear someone speak in that way, it all struck us like this guy, he looks like he could be a serial killer, but he's only 19. Do you start to go down that avenue as well to see if there are other victims?
I think that comes much later, but it is something that you're going to have to consider given the fact that he's already admitted that he finds serial killers rather fascinating. So sure, that's going to be a factor later on down in the investigation.
All right, Phil Waters, Bernie Lang, going to stick around. Up next, why did Brian Cohee do it?
Murray going to jail for this 15 years probably.
I have no idea.
Because
We're at the beginning now.
it's murder. I mean, I'm going to jail for 20 probably, but I figure, what if I didn't?
She thinks I'm gonna kill her, and then I want to kill her.
Do you?
A troubled teen who fatally shot his own father.
Now stands accused for the murder of his mother.
I'm not a psychopath. I'm not this murderer.
Was it an argument that led to a tragic accident?
Or a fit of rage that ended in cold-blooded murder?
Everybody that's special to him in his life is dead.
The Deadly Son murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
For years, I was wondering what murder would feel like, because you read like Ted Bundy and the Zodiac, they all say murder is the best feeling in the world. So I'm like, I'm going to try that. Okay. So for some time I had been wondering when it would happen. I always knew I would be in this building, whether it was as a criminal or a police officer. Okay. Because I was planning to go in the military, go into forensics. Okay. In criminology, there's different types of... I'm not a serial killer by no means.
Again, chilling. For years, wondering what it would feel like, and then talking about Zodiac and talking about other people. Like, how simple is the answer? And we've got another question here, and I don't think it's a simple answer. Let's take a look at the next question in our investigation. Why did Brian Cohee do it? Right? He kind of said it there, but is that, the answer is a level deeper, right? It's not just, oh, I wonder what it'd be like. There's something, what's really going on here? Joining me, psychotherapist, author of the book, The Minds of Mass Killers, Understanding and Interrupting the Pathway to Violence, Siobhan Scott, and clinical forensic psychologist, researcher, expert on violent crime, and author of The New Evil, Dr. Gary Brucato is with us as well. All right, Siobhan, I'll give you the first crack at this. This demeanor and everything else just has me thrown for a loop in all of this, but what are you seeing, what are you hearing here? What is the why behind this?
You know, I think he put it out there. He killed for the thrill of it. And there was a sense of excitement, an adrenaline rush, a feeling of godlike power. And this process, this fantasizing about murder, this imagining about what it would feel like, this excitement, that can release dopamine in the brain. And that's a rush of pleasure. And so when people commit murder like this can create a reinforcing loop where they seek to recreate that high. In that way, similar to an addiction. He's a very odd character, and I think when you combine his diagnosis of autism, and I'll say that autism, ADHD, and major depressive disorder do not make someone a killer by any means, but when you combine that with another factor like psychopathy, which can coexist with autism, then you have someone who's cold, callous, has no empathy for other people, and you can end up with a dangerous person like this.
You mentioned some of those conditions. Dr. Gary Brucato, I want you to take a listen to Brian Cohee himself talking about it.
I have high-functioning Asperger's.
Okay.
I have ADHD and major depressive disorder.
Okay.
Major-depressive, so you were wondering what that last one is?
Yeah, I know what they are. I was curious, what the exact diagnosis was and who diagnosed them.
It was from Lotus Counseling.
From which counseling?
Lotus Counseling. It was, I want to say, years ago.
Okay.
And he said, looks like you have major depressive disorder. I could be wrong. He could have not formally diagnosed me, but that's what he told me I have. So that's why I know about it.
Okay.
Okay, Dr. Gary Brucato, what are you seeing and hearing and your thoughts about Brian Cohee?
Well, I definitely want to echo what Siobhan said, that people with diagnoses like his are generally not dangerous. But there is a kind of phenomenon that Dr. Michael Stone and I have talked about, which we called schizoid autistic detachment. And this is a quality that you can see in people with a variety of diagnostic presentations. But the trouble with it is that when it's present, and it is in about 50% of serial killers, the person is essentially interested in the insides of bodies, what parts of bodies do, etc., in the way a person might think about dissecting a frog. You have to imagine a calculating, detached person who doesn't really have warm and fuzzy feelings about human beings. What's interesting about it is that the typical serial killer we conceptualize as being sexually motivated. But if there's a schizoid autistic detachment quality, it could be that they're just interested in feeling alive when they commit an offense, or they're curious about people. This is not someone who we understand to be accused of serial killing, but he does have that same quality of having that peculiar curiosity about body parts that we might see in serial killers with schizoid autistic qualities, like, for example, Ed Kemper, who also kept heads and other body parts and things like that, or Jeffrey Dahmer is another example of someone with that kind of callous detachment. So I think it's about wanting to feel something because of the dead schizoid detachment that the person feels internally. And the idea is, like Siobhan said about dopamine, will I feel alive again if I do this? It's more about that than I think a sexual gratification.
So nature, nurture here, Siobhan Scott, your thoughts about that. Is it something that they just are wired this way? Is it a learned behavior? Did something happen to them maybe?
Yeah, we're all a combination of biology, genetics, and life experiences. And very often with folks, you can find an abuse history, head injuries. I'm not aware of anything like that in this case. And so sometimes it does seem to be that there are just differences in the brain. We know that psychopathic people have differences in the amygdala, in the prefrontal cortex, and the insula. So they are wired differently. And that doesn't mean that they're not responsible for what they do. They need to learn how to put the brakes on their worst impulses. But I think sometimes you just have somebody that comes out different from the rest of us.
Dr. Gary Brucato, how about his demeanor? What is that? Like, why is he so calm about it and so casual about it?
Right. Well, in both individuals that are psychopathic, which is something that is speculated about here, in addition to the diagnoses that are present, you can see that lack of fear and that callousness. You have to imagine operating without very much of a functioning limbic system. It's the opposite of a person, for example, that would have panic attacks or become very anxious or alarmed, or someone highly empathic, which is very much about being alarmed about other people's feelings, right, or what's going on in the world. Imagine the opposite of that. Somebody who is so cool and so detached and so callous that when they think about human feelings, they're thinking about them the way that a scientist with a microscope might think about so many microbes in a petri dish. And as a consequence, what is there to be alarmed about? This is not even someone I'm having human feelings about. So I think that can also have a peculiarity that we don't understand, but it does seem to be present here. And that, combined with whatever else set the fire to the straw here, and what other personality features are present, makes this a pretty scary kind of individual, I think.
Absolutely. Okay. Siobhan Scott, Dr. Gary Brucato staying with us. What exactly did he do?
Circle.com.
I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of Brian Cohee Jr. I have to warn you, what you will hear out of the mouth of this 19-year-old is extremely disturbing. And what makes it even more chilling is how casually he confesses the graphic details of this horrific crime. Here's the story.
A human head and hands.
19-year-old Brian Cohee Jr. murdered a man in cold blood. A 69-year-old man he did not know. He did it because he wanted to see what it was like to kill. Then he took the victim's head and put it in his closet. His parents found that head and called 911. When police arrived, Brian quickly and casually confessed to the murder. He talked about the murder weapon and where the body was. Then when they brought him to the interrogation room, he provided many more gruesome details and insight into the murder. Despite his mental issues, the jury did not believe he met the legal standard for insanity, and Cohee was convicted and sentenced to life without parole. Now, the public is wondering how and why this happened. This interrogation is intense in the information that is coming out. But again, the casual behavior of the defendant is what makes this so difficult to really process and comprehend. So I'm going to take you into that interrogation room. Here he is describing like how he finds his victim.
And I was driving along and I see a shape here on the railway tracks. So I'm like, oh, interesting. So I go up, and as I'm looking, I see a large thing wrapped in a canvas. Okay. And I'm like, that's a homeless person. So I grab my knife, I put on 3 layers of gloves, because plastic gloves can betray their users because they're so thin, those vinyl gloves, by imprinting your fingerprints through. So I put on 3 on one hand. I took the knife, I pulled back the canvas, and I stabbed his neck. Okay. He was panicking at first in his old man voice. He was in his 50s. I know why I call him an old man. He was saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Why? Ah?" And I just kept on stabbing his neck.
There's a lot of details to the story. I mean, he goes through it piece by piece by piece, which brings us to the next question in our investigation. What exactly did he do? We got the big picture, right? But let's get into some of the details here. Joining me, psychotherapist and author of the book, The Minds of Mass Killers, Understanding and Interrupting the Pathway to Violence, Siobhan Scott, and former homicide detective with more than 20 years of experience working high-profile cases, Phil Waters. I want to play one more piece of the interrogation that I want to get, excuse me, I want to get your analysis of it. Let's take a look.
Is it okay if I do a demonstration? Oh, yeah. This is him. I was strapped on top of him like this. Okay. And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat. I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to be tough. But no, it was actually surprisingly easy. And during the time I was growling and making animalistic noises.
Why were you doing that?
I suppose it was a frenzy. Okay. I was so excited, so rushed up on adrenaline every day. But just... And I paused and he's like, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "I've been wanting to do this for a long time, murder someone." And then I continued. The whole ordeal lasted about a minute and a half. Okay. And I stabbed, and when I was finished stabbing him, he took out his last breath, a grunt, and his head was halfway cut off in stabs. All the while, no, actually, after I killed him, I just couldn't stop saying, "Stinky, dirty, dirty, stinky, stinky." I wasn't smelling anything, but...
And why were you saying that?
I don't know.
Siobhan Scott, he's providing so many details. Why is he this open?
Yeah, it's really odd. And, you know, his mother had described him in one of the initial police interviews as the textbook weird kid. And I think we're seeing that here. He doesn't seem to have much emotion at all until he's describing what he actually did, the violence. And then he's very excited by it. I also think he's enjoying getting the attention. You know, everybody's focused on him now. And the fact that he's going away to prison, and as he thinks erroneously, it's going to be for 15 years, it's actually going to be for life. That doesn't seem to bother him. It's like, here I am among the other serial killers now. I'm looked at with, you know, some sort of, as if he's going to be admired, but he doesn't seem to have any shame about it. And it shows a really aberrant, weird kind of way of thinking and processing.
All right, Phil Waters, what's it like to be in the room with someone like this? And what's the strategy? What's the game plan when you've got someone who is responding the way he's responding?
Well, I've interviewed people like him, and for me, and I'm just talking from a homicide cop's perspective, I've got a real simple definition, the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath. A sociopath goes out and commits an act that he feels or he or she feels justified in committing. A psychopath, on the other hand, goes out and commits a sociopathic act that they enjoy committing. And so what I'm seeing here with this guy is you're going to play on his ego. You want to be very interested in what he has to say because he wants to tell you what he did. And I agree with Siobhan. He's enjoying the retelling of this event, and he is getting excited all over again about what he did. You see where he has what we would call inappropriate laughter, inappropriate smiling. I mean, he's describing taking this man's life in the most gruesome way, and he's finding a level of humor in it. And that is, to me, when I'm in the room, I see that as a reflection of their feeling like they accomplished something. So it's a very, very interesting interview. Guys like this are very interesting to interview.
Yeah, and that's, I'm fascinated by the way you say you want to be as interested as possible because then he'll feed you more and more of these details. Let's take a listen to more of this. And this is one of the most shocking parts of what is completely shocking from start to finish, where he talks about cutting open the victim and why he's doing that.
I stripped his clothes. I cut open his belly to see his guts. They're really pink. Sorry, that was morbid. Then I cut off his head. I gave him a Glasgow smile. What's that? A Joker smile. I destroyed his eyes by stabbing them in. Okay. And then I cut off his hands. I put those in plastic Ziploc bags. And then I cut off his right arm at this joint and at this joint. And then at this arm, I tried cutting it here, and then I tried cutting it here. But what happened was I accidentally broke his bone. This one, it was poking out. And so I left that one here, partially cut, dismembered here, bone sticking out. And then I left his body there. And then I took the head, put it in a leftover pizza box from the dinner a few nights ago. And then I took the hands, put them in the back, drove home, hid the hands and head in my room, cleaned the knife, threw away the garbage with the blood on it, and then put the blood stained, wasn't stained, it had splatters on it. I put it in the dish, in the washing machine.
What did you put in there?
I put the outfit I murdered him in
the washing. You were wearing, or?
Yeah, I was wearing.
Okay.
In our washing machine, put it on high speed so it would effectively remove the blood. Washed it twice. And then I tried going to sleep, but I was worried that because there was a hole in my gloves right here, I was worried that they would be able to obtain a partial print. So I figured Why not go all the way? I drove back in a different outfit, picked up his body, surprisingly heavy, put it in my trunk, and drove to the Blue Heron drop-off station.
Siobhan, watching him, a couple things strike me. Like the legs are shaking. There seems to be a level of adrenaline that's, as he gets more into the details of this and is like reenacting it, like what is going on here?
You know, the pre-murder phase is pleasurable for people like this. The planning, the thinking about it, the driving around in the car at night, the hunting, they get excited from that. And of course, they're excited during the murder phase. And then they continue to relive it in their mind and think about it. And often they plot the next one. And that also gets those neurohormones going too. So that's why we think, you know, this person would have been very high risk for offending again, because clearly this excites him. You know, when your nickname in high school is Jeffrey Dahmer and your teachers are communicating that they're worried that you're going to do something dangerous in the future, we need to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. Phil, the other part of this is, right, being the person who's questioning him and doing this for a living. You know, people ask me all the time, how can you do that every night? Well, I say, I can do it. But the real question is, how can people like you do that, be in the room with him and be able to restrain your emotions as he's describing what he's describing?
Well, the simple answer for me is I'm grounded in my faith. And I know that when I'm walking in, especially when talking to somebody like this, look, he committed an act of evil. This was not just a murder. This was an act of evil. And I have to establish a relationship with that person so that they will trust me and open up, because I'm going to go into a whole lot of questions prior to getting to what he did. I want to know who he is, and I want to understand, if I can, do my own psychological autopsy on him to determine if I can understand why he did what he did. Now, I will say this, after 23 years in homicide, the one thing that I can say for certain is that anyone, me, you, Vinnie, Siobhan, anyone is capable of any act under the right set of circumstances. This guy here kind of creates his own set of circumstances because he has a goal. And look, people kill people for one of three reasons, either sex, drugs, or money. There is a carnal component to a person who does something like this. Siobhan has used the word excited, and I'm going to relate that to this carnal component. There is a level of excitement that gets right down to the basic lust of a person. And when he is stabbing this man, and you're seeing the leg pumping, and he's very excited about this, I'm telling you, he's getting a rush in a sexual way. And so it's at least the folks that I've talked to, that's what it's gone out to be. And I get the same impression from him in this short bit of the
Great insight. So appreciated. Thank you so much, Phil. All right, still to come. Were there warning signs?
Our kids are both doing good. They're okay in school. They don't drink or smoke. So I didn't really have no warnings that this was going to happen, no.
Grieving widow or mastermind behind a murder. Monica Cementelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cementelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The Celebrity Stylist Murder Trial. Weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
He told us once he smoked marijuana. At his age now, I've done that too, and I'm like, and he doesn't drink. So we're thinking we're doing good. Right. Our kids are both doing good. They're okay in school. They don't drink or smoke. So I didn't really have no warnings that this was going to happen. No. Right.
That's Brian Cohee's father saying, no warning. This just sort of hit him out of the blue, that there was the writing wasn't on the wall, there were no issues. Now I want you to take a listen to Brian Cohee's mother and her perspective on whether there were signs or not.
He's 5. We were told he has ADHD. So we put him on ADHD medicine. In middle school, he started exhibiting antisocial behavior. Just saying things to get kids riled up. He did okay in 9th grade. In 10th grade, he got in a lot of trouble, a lot of behavior issues. 11th grade, we had a big meeting, and they said, kid's no good. The doctor had said, yes, he's ADHD. Yes, he's autistic. Yes, he's this. Oh, and there's some indications that he should get further testing because of potential psychosis.
Completely different story, right? So on the one hand, you have dad who thought everything was okay, no warning signs for any of us, and mom is talking about antisocial behavior, going all the way back to middle school, getting in a lot of trouble, behavior issues, and potential psychosis, right? Dad saying one thing, mom saying something else, brings us to the next question. In our investigation, were there warning signs here? Are there warning signs? I mean, this is a horrific crime. He lives at home with mom and with dad. Joining me, anchor it, KREX TV, Grand Junction, Colorado, Bernie Lang. Bernie, what do we know about his background, friends, family, classmates? Did any of this information sort of come out after this horrific crime?
After the horrific crime, yes, there were reports that he had killed a cat, beheaded a cat, possibly, again, putting it in his closet. And of course, in advance of what happened, he had told people that he wanted to kill a homeless man or a prostitute, saying that, well, if it's a homeless man or a prostitute, homeless person or a prostitute, they wouldn't be found, they wouldn't be missed, as if that's, you know, a way of admitting he could get away with it. Now, he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and in Colorado, you have to be able to distinguish between right and wrong to be ruled not guilty by reason of insanity, I guess. So, and of course, it was mentioned earlier that he had a nickname, Jeffrey Dahmer, in school. So, yeah,
That's a bit of a red flag. It's a little bit of a red flag.
That's a bit of that and a dead cat in the closet.
Wow.
And then just casually bringing up in conversation, you know, I want to kill somebody, preferably a homeless person, so they won't be found.
Okay, joining us by phone, we lost the video signal, but we've got him by phone, clinical forensic psychologist, researcher, expert on violent crime, and author of The New Evil, Dr. Gary Brucato. Dr. Gary Brucato, this is always, you know, we look at what happened here. Were there warning signs? Were there obvious warning signs? Mom was talking about antisocial behavior, getting into trouble, behavior issues, some indication that he should get further testing because of potential psychosis. Classmates calling him Jeffrey Dahmer as his nickname. My goodness, it seems to me there are some red flags flying here.
Well, it's a little complicated because what it looks like is the convergence of two things, which is somebody who had a personality structure that might have been characterized by callousness and some of the psychopathic traits that one might see in an antisocial person. And also these kind of peculiarities seem to be developmental in nature, according to his diagnosis, that would have been there from the time he was a kid. But this would have all run up against some kind of mental health crisis, something that set the match to the straw, in terms of relating to other people, probably going through puberty, interpersonal, peculiarities, being made fun of, etc. So what we wind up with is this terrible soup of somebody who simply doesn't have coping skills to deal and is taking out anger and other feelings through this kind of mechanism of being a peculiar, angry person who thinks in a weird way about how to resolve conflict. And so I think the red flags are ones for somebody developing more serious issues
interpersonal issues, getting more angry, and doing some of those kind of things that are pretty obvious and classic in terms of somebody being at risk for aggression. If you were to walk into an emergency room and say to the doctor there, yeah, I just killed a cat, and I think about killing people and I'm fascinated with murder and so forth, they might think twice before sending you home. Because these would be pretty classic indicators of somebody that is pretty actively thinking about doing things like that. So I think if you have somebody who's making red flag statements like that, somebody might want to consider pulling them into a guidance office or something and figuring out what might be going on and how to intervene, and possibly giving mental health intervention.
Here's more from Brian's mother talking about his fascination with crime.
About any fascinations or things that he fixates on? A lot of perseveration on crime and crime scene. And so he's talking about going into the military in the fall, and when he gets out, having your job. And so I had purchased online a crime scene investigation book for him. It's like ones that you probably read it when you first started out in college. And so I gave that to him, and I was like, so here, Brian, let's channel that curiosity into something positive that you can affect a good change in the world. And he's like, yeah, that's my plan, Mom. And, he would watch, like just last week, he watched Silence of the Lambs. But I was like, well, he's 19, not sure, Probably all watched it. Well, I watched it. It doesn't make me a serial killer.
Dr. Gary Brucato, how about the fascination with crime, like crime shows, and had just watched Silence of the Lambs?
Right. Well, it's very interesting because, particularly in a person with a diagnosis of high-functioning autism, becoming fixated on some peculiar topic is not unusual, particularly the visual fascination with it, the technical visual quality this guy seems to have, as we saw when he was acting out the crime and writing on the wall and all of that. The trouble is that, and I think the mother kind of hit the nail on the head with it, is that these things can be used in a pro-social way as opposed to an antisocial way if somebody is loved by the world and accepted and so forth. But once you go down the path of kind of hating the world, being angry at people, you use those things in that kind of way. So you think about him as somebody who could have, perhaps been a surgeon or, been totally immune to the disgust we might have looking at the gore inside of people, but can use it in a pro-social way. But then he winds up instead of, becoming a crime scene investigator or whatever the mom is saying, and becoming somebody instead who uses it in a violent way. Right.
Dr. Gary Brucato, thank you so much for your valuable time. Bernie Lang, KREX, thank you as well. Folks, there's a big difference between mental illness and legal insanity. This case, great example. While someone may have a medical diagnosis of a mental issue, they do not always meet the legal standard of insanity. And that's on purpose. Our system is not about just punishing people for crimes. It's about protecting the public from dangerous people. And Brian Cohee Jr. is dangerous. There's no question about that. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.